got to shoot your shot, right? So he's like, yeah, I'm going to teach courses at a couple of places. And Art Institute was like, no, we don't know her. Like, we don't know who you are. But I mean, obviously there's other complicated like issues that are going on with Kanye, but it was bizarre.
Yeah, it is strange. And even the Instagram posts themselves, like the pictures of the sketches he was making, just kind of random photos. And I think it kind of brings up a larger issue here is obviously we keep on talking. I mean, look at this image here. You can see buildings inside the hills. I mean, it's kind of nonsensical. I mean, maybe there's a point to it that I'm just not aware of, but I think eventually we need to have a broader discussion about, you know, what's going on with Kanye.
And his mental health.
And his mental health. And it's a serious discussion to have, honestly.
No question, John. And I think, you know, us as we sit here and look, we are covering the news and what's topical and what people want to know about every day. A lot of times it's Donald Trump, obviously, is the president, but a lot of times it happens to be Kanye West. And I don't think we're treating this properly, the media, us here too at the Jam, in terms of this is a guy with severe mental issues. This is a guy who has been diagnosed as bipolar. So we cover these stories. It's like, hey, let's laugh at not necessarily us here, but a lot of the media and just people in general. Let's laugh at what Kanye's done next. Oh, here we go on a roller coaster ride. But what we're seeing is somebody who's suffering the highs and lows of battling a mental disorder.
It's an actionable moment. It's an actionable moment to open up a discussion about it. Like Kevin Love the other day was on The Daily Show, and he had a wonderful conversation with Trevor Noah about his battle with depression.
Kevin Love, an NBA player for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Yeah, I just think like if this was your neighbor who was struggling with something like this, you wouldn't be gathering around on a cul-de-sac and saying, hey, look what Joe just did.
Right.
What's going on with Joe? You'd be like, Joe is struggling through something. We need to be there for Joe. And I don't think Kanye's getting that same treatment.
Well, and I also think it's not only is the media partly to blame for building these stories up. People want to consume these stories all the time. I think that should have some self-reflection, whether we should really be so voyeuristic in these intentions. But also to this family, this gigantic family, which could have all the resources in the world to get the best help in the world. Those people out there that are struggling with mental illness that simply cannot afford any of the resources.
You think he's being exploited?
I don't know if it's exploitation, and certainly it could be mutual, but this entire family is making millions upon billions of dollars because of this voyeurism, and I think that it is a little disrespectful to Kanye, and maybe he needs to take a hard look at himself too, and like, let's really dive into helping him become a better person and helping fix him instead of them continuing just to, not exploit, but maybe exploit, but continue to make money off of his crazy tendencies.
And look, he lost his mother. She tragically died years back, so he doesn't have that. He lost his manager, Don C., who he said would have been a great piece of stability if he had him in his corner. Maybe it is that people around him don't have necessarily his best interest.
Right.
And Chicago's been talking about that for a long time. So it just feels like a roller coaster, and you never know what's coming next with Kanye, which isn't something that we in the news say, oh, I can't wait what he's got next. It's almost like I hope that this gets handled properly.
I mean, I don't think there is any like right time or wrong time. If I'm reading this correctly, I think this was a charity event in Napa Valley, as one does. And so like the parents were going to be there, and I think his brother was playing a role because I think it was his brother's charity. And so it's like, you know, sometimes there's holidays that come up when you're dating and you're like, oh, hey, do you want to come? And it just so happens to be that the family is going to be there. I don't so much have a problem with that. I think it gets more into a stickier issue like when it's time to meet the kids.
Yeah.
But,
which we've had that conversation a lot here.
Right. But with Chris Pratt, I'm not mad at, I mean, he loves the Lord, and if loving the Lord is wrong, like I think she's like a little bit more wholesome than Anna Faris is. If you've ever listened to her podcast, you know, she's a little bit wilder, more out there. So I think, I mean, it feels natural, it looks natural.
Traditions are maybe dying a little bit in terms of meeting the family being as big as it used to be.
Right, and Catherine coming from that famous family, like, she doesn't seem like she's just like an IG, you know, fame-seeking social media climber.
It's all individual. It's all where you are in your relationship. There certainly is a time that's too early to meet family, and I've been in situations where someone wants to introduce you to their family a little earlier, and you're like, well, we're not ready for that. But also, I think for a lot of people, introducing someone to their family is not only a big step for them personally, for them as a couple, but also the idea that, well, it's not the end-all, be-all. You want this person that you're about to spend maybe some significant time with, maybe the rest of your life, that how they interact with your family, I think is a really important part of that pie.
Yeah, no question. I agree with you guys on that one. And just taking it back for a second to Chris Pratt and Catherine Schwarzenegger here, it feels like a rebound to me, and I hate to be the person.
But that's another like, you should be this, like, you should be single for this long after breakup. You should wait this long to introduce to your family. But I mean, I know it was very soon. I know, but it was so soon.
It just doesn't seem like.
But you don't know how long they were unhappy in the marriage.
Yeah, you don't know that part, and I hate when people sit there and judge a relationship that they don't know anything about. I'm just saying the optics of it, because I feel like when I was watching Chris Pratt and Anna Faris again from very far away through the lens of a television, they seemed like they were having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And so for him to jump out of that, I mean,
to the literal opposite.
Right.
Like
Yes.
literal opposite.
Yeah. So I think maybe it's the grass is always greener on the other side, which is the stark opposite. But is it really? So we'll see. Obviously, I'm rooting for it to work. You want everybody to be happy.
I mean, also, you don't want to make Arnold mad?
Yeah, and I was just going to say, that's quite the, yeah.
You're not going to like him when he's upset.
As a black woman, let me just say that I'm tired. I'm so very tired. Poor Serena. First of all, the reason she's wearing that tutu is because her cat suit got banned. She gets drug tested more than anybody in the league. Umpires come for her on the reg. Someone tweeted out a wonderful tweet of one of the baseball coaches, and they said, oh, he was arguing. He was, very vociferously, impassioned with like arguing with the ref, but she had a meltdown.
Yeah.
And it's so many obstacles, that she has to overcome every time that she steps onto the court. And Billie Jean King was like, this is not fair.
Right.
This is not right. All of the things that she's fighting against just institutionally with the whole tennis system. And I kind of just want her to go into like a Samuel L. Jackson like monologue from Pulp Fiction. It's like, I will strike upon you with great vengeance and furious anger. All who threaten me. Like I just want her to like embrace it. Yeah. Like,
but not pull out the weapon.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? The cartoon came out and people immediately reacted to it,
Sure.
of course, and how could you not? And the cartoonist in Australia said, well, look, this wasn't about necessarily Serena. I've done other political cartoons in the past about John McEnroe, other tennis players for expressing being too violent on the court. Not violent, but being too angry on the court or whatever the case may be. But it's the image itself
Yeah.
that, I mean,
Yeah.
and I understand cartoonists are meant to do caricatures and they're meant to draw out certain features, but like that is rooted in history in some of the most racist images you've ever seen portraying black people. It really is.
Yeah,
it offenses you.
It's very offensive to me, John. Absolutely. It takes me back to everyone remembers that little story, those incredibly racist Little Black Sambo.
Sure.
And that imagery, that satirical visual of black people with big lips
and
looked like
right.
an animal and behaved like a tamed animal that belonged in a cage. And that's what you see there in the image. The cartoonist, it's clearly going over his head because he responded to people and said, here's an image of a male tennis player and here's the drawing, which didn't play up any racist features. It was the idea that Serena doesn't look like that.
Right.
When was the last, are Serena's lips that big?
No,
playing
she's
to the
beautiful.
belief that black people have big lips and look like apes that do this and that? Like, it's racist.
Right.
And the visual of it, I don't need to hear anything else. I don't like the visual of it. It takes us back to a very dark time where this is how we portrayed, and this is how people who have racist views see black people, and I'm not comfortable with that.
And you can certainly debate the message of what he's saying about how she exhibits on the court and whether you agree or disagree with it. But it's all lost because of the way he chose to portray her. That he's not even any point that he might have, whether you think it's valid or not, is just lost completely in discussion by his choice of how he chooses to draw her caricature.
Yeah, well, clearly us at the table here are pretty offended by this one.
The more people you get behind this movement, obviously, it makes it important. But when you hear from a former NFL star and now a giant TV personality with broad appeal to all sorts of Americans, whether you're white, you're black, whether you're a man, whatever it may be.
Conservative, liberal.
It doesn't matter. Everybody loves Michael Strahan. For him to come forward, it's a big, bold step for him, and I think it's really going to make an impact, hopefully, on this movement.
Yeah, I think so too. And also too, I mean, looking at Nike being the financial expert here, Nike stock has bounced back this week, wiping out all losses from it was down maybe like 3%.
A minimal loss. It shouldn't have even been reported to begin with.
Online sales, in fact, were up 31%. I also come from a military family. Both of my parents were in the Air Force and, instilled great patriotic values in me. But again, it's not about protesting the anthem. It's about the injustice, the inequality, the police brutality. And I mean, I'm not mad about Michael Strahan. Especially his face.
It's really interesting because this has been such a sports forum in terms of people who voiced their support or lack of support. It's been, well, guys either kneel or they don't kneel. A lot of people outside of that forum haven't been vocal in opposition or for it outside of the political realm. So this is really interesting for somebody who holds the stature that he does, not being thrown to the fire, basically opening up and saying, a lot of people, I feel like in that position, I guess, would be like, don't ask me about this.
Right.
Right.
I don't want to touch it.
It's too hot.
But Michael Strahan was like, ask me away. This is what I feel.
Right.
And I think when he says that, it says to some people, it might flip people on this one.
Right, and I think you bring up an interesting point about the topics being too hot to touch. I feel like too much in this culture, in this country, we are also we're so afraid to give our opinions on things because of all the vitriol we see in the discussion.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of financial consequences too.
A fair point, but I think that it's a bold move, and I think that maybe we could all take something from Michael Strahan. And look, even if he had the opinion on the other side, whether you agree or disagree with this issue, I think, and part of it has to do with the way the president tweets about these sorts of issues to make it so divisive. Why can we not have these sort of discussions in our country? No matter which side you come on the debate about this, let's be respectful about it. Let's have a conversation. All right, you don't think we should be able to kneel for the anthem? Why? Let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation. Let's get more military people involved. We bring up the military so often.
Sure.
We're always pulling anecdotal evidence from, oh, my dad says my grandpa doesn't care. My grandpa does care. Let's actually sit down as a country and have a conversation that's a real one without resorting to throwing people under the bus and making them hurt financially or in some other way because of their opinion on this.
Yeah, and what I've kind of seen it over the years with politics and especially this anthem thing is it becomes an indictment on who you are.
Yes.
Where people think, well, if you feel this way, then you must not care about these group of people. Take the anthem. For example, it's not about the anthem. And
Right.
I hate that that's how this
that
thing has
too.
been categorized now. It's about the anthem. It's about police brutality, and it's about how black men, most especially, but black people in general, have been treated by the police. That's what this is about. But let's call it the anthem protest. And if people are in support of the kneeling, then they must hate the military. They must be unpatriotic. They must not care about this country. They must be selfish. And for those who say they shouldn't be kneeling, then it becomes a lot of people just throw those people in a category of you're racist.
Right.
Sure.
So people fear that they can't have an opinion because they can't be in control of the narrative of who they are. So then they decide not to speak on it. So I challenge everybody out there to listen to people, not wait for them to finish speaking so you can indict them.
Right.
Hear what they're saying,
so
hear where
many
they're coming
nuances.
from, and then have the conversation because then you have rich dialogue and you get somewhere.
And the more civil we can make our conversations, not only about the quote-unquote anthem debate or any other debates, I think that is going to really help us move forward as a country.